Hello, everybody. So we're going to be talking about drinking, drugs, alcohol, that part of it and what it does with the brain. I'm going to be focusing more on the science component than the ethical part of it. So I'm here to present you some fact and a little bit of psychology, of course. And let's get started. Hi, if you don't know who I am, I'm Sindy V King. I'm a creator of Calling My King. I help transform a woman to create lasting love through Vedic astrology, neuroscience, and transactional analysis so that she becomes the queen of love. I want to specifically say there's nothing wrong either if you decide to have a certain lifestyle, that's up to you. I'm here to prove a science point, and science is all about not dealing with the truth, but the probability. So I want you to keep that in mind before you kind of write anything in the comment down below. I really want you to write your experience about some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about, because I think that's really important and vital as well. So a little bit of psychology first before we go into a deep dive about the brain. I'm going to get a little bit nerdy in science with you. And I don't know, do people really trust you more wearing a trench coat, like a lab coat? I just don't feel comfortable. Anyway, my lab coat is tie-dye, so I don't know how that's going to make any difference from as a viewer yourself. But let's get really specific first with the psychology. Do you guys know what the 6 metaphysical perspectives is? Do you guys know anything of it? Yes, no, maybe so, maybe leave a comment down below. Actually, I'm really curious. I want you to leave a comment down below right now if you do know the 6 metaphysical perspectives. So if you can actually list them out, I'll leave the answer at the very end of this video so you can know if you're in the right track or not. It is kind of in the psychology component. I'll give you that a little bit of a hint. Okay, so we already know that the seat of the soul, it has to lie with our pineal gland. So that's going to control a little bit more about our brain and our functionality and our throwing up part of it. So if you guys heard of binge drinking, yeah, our pineal gland is our gauge meter of like how much toxin is there in the body. So let's talk about the psyche. It's a really important perspective to be a source of a human being. The whole idea of the left and right brain, I want to kind of break that myth. It's just one big component, but we do have a left and right side. And some other component, you have heard me call it the masculine and feminine part of it, because there's one side controls mostly emotion, the other side more logical and strategic. So if you're gonna have the whole idea of hating the fact about science in alcohol, maybe this is not a video for you. This is what I'm going to be presenting you, how chemical alter your decision making and as well alter who you select as a sexual partner, and maybe a little bit of biology 101, maybe. So we can talk about male to male competition one day. But really what I'm talking about, once you have any kind of substance, any alternative chemical change towards the brain, it's going to alter your either frontal lobe, where it's going to help you make certain decision of what you want and how you rationalize things. The frontal lobe is twice as big compared to male's brain. And when I talk about male, I'm talking about X and Y chromosome. And when I talk about female, we're talking about X and X chromosome. We're not talking about gender specific. I understand that our society is moving into a different direction when we identify gender specific, but this is completely about the biological of a chromosome, of what makes a female's brain and what makes a male's brain as well. So we know that when we have alcohol or any alternative recreational drug, it is going to alter your decision making, especially your frontal lobe. if you have an injury of your frontal lobe, which is most very common, if you have an injury in that area, it is already changing who you are and without you actually knowing it. So the problem is when we altering any sort of changing chemical to the brain or anything like that, it's going to switch side and overcompensate certain things that you decide to do and yes or no. Are you guys more curious with how hormones affects of who you select as a sexual mate? Maybe leave a comment down below and remind me to make a video because it has to do with our D2 and D4, which is our index and our ring finger, about how that affects our decision making when it comes to sexual selection. So if you are interested in something like that, please leave a comment down below and I can talk about later. Back to our whole idea of chemical changes. When we turn off certain type of area of our brain, that means we're either, I talked about inhibitor and exhibitor as well in my channel. So you want to have a little quick update, maybe go and watch that video. I'll leave a link up on top. So when we're having alcohol, and alcohol tends to be a downer and not an upper. And if it's cannabis, it's neutral, how you select your mate. So when you are going on a date, if you're overriding your no's by saying yes through substance, honestly, you're not living your true self. And you have to be in that state all the time when you're around them, because you need to learn how to deal with your vagus nerve, which is part of it, or your fight or flight is your parasympathetic nervous system and so forth in that area. When you turn off certain part of your brain, it changes who you are. So we talked about the whole idea, we have a left and right side of the brain, and now we're introducing turning off certain part of your brain. So that will be a third component of your part of your personality as well. They say that when somebody considered to be an alcoholic, so that means they need to have alcohol on a regular basis in order to function, develop an intolerance as well on top of that. So that when the minute they get off of alcohol, they cannot function what they normally have done, because that's a learning mechanism that they're component of part of their brain. So they need to relearn everything. So if you're having alcohol and you're having sex, guess what? You're training your body to learn a certain way with a chemical that changes your brain to feel a certain way, to do a certain way. The minute you're completely sober for years and years and years down the road, you don't know how to make love. So there's a difference from animal versus with our little conscious brain, and I talk about that in Jung's work. And I will link another video, cannabis or whatever recreational drugs that impair your judgment. Okay, anything that impairs your judgment, it is considered to be kicking into your gear, like GABA is for one of them, and that's part of alcohol. So it bypasses the frontal lobe. So if you didn't think that other person was hot to begin with, the more that you have either the substance, they become hotter and hotter because your frontal lobe is kind of going down. So it's actually decreasing that level of activities when I say that. So how do you overcome something like this? And there's no easy matter of this, and it just take practice and being consistent about it. So if you're used to having maybe an alcohol at your date, maybe try only half of it and see how that affects your judgment, or having just water for that day, or having dates that's more during the day or more activity during the day. It's still going to give you the dopamine that you need to have, which is part of it, right? And the serotonin that makes you feel all that love in the air. So soon I'll be making a video about opioid receptors and dopamine circulator, and see how that affects in your relationship, because I think these are a really important component. The reason why I think it's a really important component, you know which stage you are at. So if you're still in the honeymoon phase or you're still not in the honeymoon phase, I will let you know. And if you meet anybody, you can tell them if they're adrenaline junkie, how quick their dopamine circuit will be wear and tear. So they won't be able to feel fun unless it's like a scary situation they put themselves into. I think this is such a big component about sexual selection. And that's something you kind of learn in like first year biology. Maybe correct me maybe if you're in a different country, maybe that's something that you didn't learn in science, but that's something that in America and in the Western culture, that's something that we first learn in first year. So I'm kind of give you a little of a digester of how we sexually select our mate. And it's such a vital, important component. So when you are drinking anything or have any sort of substance, it changes your DNA as well. Have you heard that, my grandma was an alcoholic, current mom is an alcoholic, and it passed down to generation. However, it does skip in generation. I really want to hear what you have to say when it comes to altering chemical, if that's something that you have noticed that people change in their behavior or they cannot function without it. So, and what was your experience based on either you live with one or you noticed that in the family dynamic that there was generation that there was no alcohol or substance abuse or anything like that component. So just a reminder, when you are dating with somebody who is considered to be having altering chemical changes through their brain, it considered to be, I call it poly person. I'm not talking about anybody who needs their psycho medication. I'm not specifically talking about that. I'm talking about a normal, healthy brain going from changes to personal lifestyle choices, alternating that and how they function differently around certain environment. And if it's something that could be tolerable or not tolerable as well. So I want you to speak to your doctor if you're having any sort of symptoms or you're trying to kick out certain habits, how to do it in a safe way versus with something that is not. And sometimes, honestly, if you don't have enough of dopamine or you have too much of dopamine, it changes who you are as well. So you can go from schizophrenic, and so that's too much of dopamine, and then really strongly advise if you're going to go see a physician, please talk to them. The whole idea of this video is really allowing yourself, not escaping your feeling, finding an alternative way to get the support that you need, and psychoeducation. So really important. I'm going to right now leave you the 6 medical physical perspective on here. And I hope you had fun. So if you guys got it all right, congratulations. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye now.